5. The Hammersmith Ghost. One of the best known and best documented deaths that was, albeit indirectly, attributable to a spectre is that of the Hammersmith Ghost. In the early years of the 19th century, West London's Hammersmith district was full of rumours about a terrifying apparition that was haunting one of the area's graveyards. Local people reported seeing a figure in white, sporting the glass eye and horns, who would emerge suddenly from the spooky shadows, wailing, moaning, and writhing before passers-by. After a pregnant woman claimed to have been attacked physically and the wagon driver abandoned his passengers and horse in fear at the sight of the spectre, the news spread that the ghost may have been that of a man who had recently killed himself before being buried in a churchyard's consecrated ground. The reports were taken so seriously that armed patrols were sent out to arrest the ghost, and it wasn't long before one of their number, an excise officer by the name of Smith, encountered it in person. After demanding to know the identity of the apparition and receiving no response, he fired a shot from his gun, fearing that he would become the next victim. Unfortunately, it was no ghost that lay dead in the graveyard. Instead, the victim, Thomas Millwood, was a man, a plasterer wearing the white clothing that signified his trade. For the Curse of King Tut. During the early 1920s, the pharaoh Tutankhamun's tomb was discovered in the Valley of the Kings, an ancient Egyptian burial site dating back to the 16th century BC. The virtually undisturbed tomb was uncovered by Howard Carter, the British archaeologist, together with the 5th Earl of Carnarvon. The amazing haul of finds would become a worldwide media sensation. However, the press also seized on the stories which said the curse would fall on anybody who desecrated the pharaoh's tomb, and shortly after, Lord Carnarvon himself met an untimely death in Cairo. Arthur Conan Doyle, famed Sherlock Holmes creator, fueled the fires of the rumor mill by telling the press that it was an evil spirit which had been summoned by ancient Egyptian priests to protect their pharaoh in death, which could have killed Carnarvon. While all this speculation may have diminished over time, the following years saw a string of deaths of numerous people who had been part of the team that had uncovered the tomb or who had, in some way, been involved with the proceedings. Among the death toll was Arthur Mace, a member of the excavation team who was killed by arsenic in 1928, Richard Bethel, Howard Carter's secretary who allegedly smothered to death in his sleep in 1929, and Sir Archibald Douglas Reed, who was responsible for X-raying the pharaoh's money and watch. The victim of a mysterious death in 1924. Could an ancient Egyptian ghost have been responsible? 3. The Thai Widow Ghost. In 2013, villagers living in Matumbang Sawang in Thailand were terrorized by the ghost of a widow who was believed to have killed 10 men in the space of a single month. All of the men had died under mysterious circumstances, some while sleeping and others apparently dropping dead while walking around. All had been declared by doctors to have died of respiratory failure. Since none of the men had shown any signs of being ill, the villagers hired a spirit medium, who blamed a widow ghost for the deaths. The medium then recommended that each resident hang red shirts outside their houses so that the spirit would be repelled, especially those who only had a single son, since they were most at risk of a ghostly visit. For a while that may have been the end of the inexplicable deaths in Tumpang Sawang. In 2018, a different Thai district was being terrorized in the same way. Was it the same ghostly widow? 2. The Aged Labourer. In 19th century England, coroners and juries relied on the evidence of witnesses in court to determine the cause of death in cases where the deceased was believed to have died of unnatural causes. In Bristol in 1841, an inquest was held into the death of Patrick Hayes, an aged labourer who had fallen down the stairs and died. The wife of the landlord of the inn in which he had died, Mary Croker, gave testimony that she had heard the sound of the deceased as he fell down the stairs. She shouted out, asking who had fallen, and the reply, in the deceased's voice, said, "It is me, and I am dead." In her questioning under oath, Mary Croker informed the coroner that the man had clearly seen the house's resident ghost, a lady wearing a silk gown who had already killed 2 or 3 of her former lodgers by scaring them to death. 1. The Springfield Jack Case. Another tragic tale of the 19th century is that of Jane Halsall, a 7-year-old girl from Lancashire, England, who allegedly died at the hands of a spectre known as Springfield Jack. Stories of an apparition named Springfield Jack had been in circulation for several decades before the unfortunate death of Jane Halsall, and fear of this terrifying character had not abated over the years. when Jane returned home one day saying that her playmates had warned her that Springfield Jack was on his way to her hometown. Her parents tried to allay her fears. However, that very night, Jane fell seriously ill and was unconscious by the time the doctor arrived. Just 6 hours before her untimely death, she was quoted as having said, "The ghost is coming." The coroner concluded that she died of fright and laid the blame on Springfield Jack, or rather the man he believed was impersonating the evil spirit. The coroner's court jury found Jack guilty of the death of the little girl, arguably meaning that a ghost was tried and found guilty in a court of law. Thank you for watching my videos. Please subscribe and share.